That's why we don't start the recording, because then we'd be recording ourselves talking about all these things. Okay, so
Okay,
now
it
we're
still
recording.
says only 9 participants. That's us.
Right, but the attendees will start coming in as soon as the,
It's not
We
letting me.
got 11.
If you could let me share, then I'll be able to do it, but, or maybe transfer over the hosting duties. And I will accept it if you send it to me.
Okay, hi there, Lois. And hi, oh, Janine, I said hi to you already. And hi,
all right, so
George.
Dan, you're now the host, and maybe you can make me a co-host.
I will do that. Yeah, let me go ahead and share the screen to start.
Okay,
it's
so
in some-
now we have 18 participants. Let me see.
Letting me share. It's saying it's paused.
Well,
So I like 15 minutes early, but
Was the other
Michael,
screen so awful? It wasn't the full screen, but it was
it
still.
doesn't look very good. Yeah, it's kind of
But if
split,
that's, you know,
but you could blow it up. Let me give me one more second. I'm gonna get someone in here to who knows Zoom even better than me, but
Okay.
I've never seen it.
you got,
Oh, well, let me just check one other thing. Let me do here.
If you can make me a co-host, I'll handle the people and the attendees.
Okay.
yeah, we need certain people elevated that I can see.
Okay, you are now a
We have
co-host.
18 folks.
I'm gonna try the screen share one more time.
Anybody?
Still not there. One more. What's
Drink. Mark, would you be able to elevate some people if I tell you to?
I am working on it right now, but they don't seem to be going anywhere.
Well, do you have the names?
Yeah,
I'll
well,
tell you who.
it's Senator Hoylman Siegel,
Yes. And Eric
Eric
Botcher.
Botcher, right?
Okay.
Just clicked on him
And
again.
Michael Corrado.
Oh, there they go. There you go. Michael Corrado, very good.
Okay. And that is all so far.
Okay. Oh, and
It says there's screen sharing is paused.
is
Oh,
Adam
Adam
here?
White also to be elevated. Oh, and Joel Matola. Now, let me just see what other names I will recognize. I think that may be it so far. Oh, and then Donna Raftery and Carter Booth, who are
yep, I asked
CB2
them to,
members.
they have to click yes.
Okay. Let's see, we don't have Brad Lander yet. That's a Brad.
It's not saying that you can share.
You're talking right now. It's okay. Don't
Oops.
Do you
So
want me to
let's
do it,
see what we
Dan,
have
and we'll just go with what I got?
share the.
Who is Eden Miller? Hi,
That's-
Eric.
Eden is my wife who's gonna be listening in. So no, it doesn't look like it's allowing me to share. So you go ahead. You should be able to share. It's just gonna be split.
There we go.
You could blow it up beyond 100% and then you can get rid of the meeting protocol, or you could make it smaller and you could see both panels at the same time.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, everybody, please bear with us. We're just getting a little technical organization here. Almost there, almost there. And while we're doing this, let me please tell you all that this is an announcement of our meeting, what the topic of the agenda is. But in addition to that, the protocol for the meeting. So if we can move that up a little, can we do that? We can show folks the meeting protocol. Great. Okay. So I think I'm going to start. Yeah. Everybody ready? Okay.
Yes.
Anyhow, good evening, everybody. And welcome to Community Board 2 Manhattan's Traffic and Transportation Committee. I'm Shirley Secunda, the committee chair, and I will introduce our committee members who are present by calling their names, that is, the attendants. And when I do, committee members, will you please raise your hands and say something like, I'm here, I'm here. And that way everybody will know who you are. So I'm going to start with my calling. So first is Natasha Avanesian, because they're doing this alphabetically. Natasha, I know
I'm
you.
here.
There you are, Natasha Avanesian. And next is Amy Brenner. I think Amy Brenner may be a little late because she's working late. Okay. We have Janet Lift. Janet, can you just, there you are.
Hello.
JL. And Dan Miller, I think, who has, there he is, Dan Miller. Lois Rakoff. I know.
Hi,
I see you,
everyone.
Lois. There you are. Okay, Lois. And Anthony Wong, I see your representation there, Anthony.
Yep,
Can you
I'm
come-
here.
Your face, okay, there you go.
I'm here.
Okay. And Adam Zeldin is not here tonight. He's absent. Actually, he's on a plane right now. I think he was going to try to get on, but well, what can you do? And Joseph Flayhaven, I know I saw. So there you are, Joseph. Hi there. And last being George Hykalis, who I guess I saw also.
Hello, hello.
Oh, there, I hear you, I hear you. There you are. Okay. So you've seen our procedure, and I hope you've really studied it. And basically, I just really want to tell you how we do this for those of you who haven't been here before. So anyone who's unfamiliar, the procedure basically, the protocol basically says the presentation goes first, then the committee asks questions, then our guests, who are community folks and the general public, elected officials and their reps, and any of our other guests, and they will get 2 minutes to ask questions, sometimes a minute, and we will ask our guests tonight to keep their questions very precise in the interests of time. And we're not going to ask for comments tonight. We're just going to ask for questions. So when we get to that, what you will want to do to be called on is simply to use the raise hand function, or else if you're dialing in, the *9 function, and you'll be placed on mute until the Q&A. So don't try to speak out. Rest assured, as long as you raise your hand, you'll get your turn. So once questions and answers are completed, the committee conducts its business session. And in there, we deliberate about what we just heard and decide how to follow through, whether it's with a resolution, a report, or both. And during this session, only CB2 members speak. And everyone is invited to stay, though, and observe the discussion. This month's full board meeting will be held on Thursday, February 16th, at 6:30 p.m. And that's where the final decision is made by all Community Board 2 members on how we go forth with this. And if you would like to attend that, just check the CB2 website under the calendar heading. To register to attend the meeting, the website address is manhattancb2.org. And now, finally, for the subject of our meeting, which we've been hearing a lot about lately, which is the ever-increasing problem of drivers obscuring their license plates to avoid measures for speeding or illegal parking or going through tolls. And we decided that we'd like to learn a little more about this. And so we've invited some experts on the matter to discuss how this practice endangers us all and how we can handle it. So our guests tonight to discuss this are New York City Controller Brad Lander, who I don't think is here yet, right, Adam?
No, I'm here. Hello.
Oh,
Can-
there you are. Hi there, Brad. Thank you for being here. And
Great to be with you.
Councilmember Eric Botcher, there you are, Eric, if you want to just raise your hand. And then Sergeant Michael Corrado, I saw him before, and I think we have elevated him. If not, we should be. And he's from the NYPD First Precinct. I see that Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel is here. Is that correct? Or is Carol Wexelbaum here?
He's here, but I don't think he has his video on. Can I make a recommendation, Shirley?
Sure.
That only the panelists that were invited keep their video on, and that way we can really isolate them, and then everyone else turns off their video. And that way,
Okay.
you really can focus on those who are going to be speaking tonight.
All right. Anyhow, those are the folks who are going to be speaking tonight on the panel, and we welcome them, and we really thank you so very much for attending. And then prior to our panel discussion, we have Adam White here. And Adam, you want to raise your hand and be prepared to come on. Adam's from the Carroll and White attorneys, and he's very familiar with this issue. And he's going to give us a short overview about it before we go into our panel. So go to it, Adam, anytime you're ready.
One second, Shirley, if you don't mind, Shirley and George and Lois, if you could turn off your cameras, please. Thank you. George, can you turn your camera off? I'm not sure George hears me. Can you turn your camera off, George? Thank you.
You know, I don't really think this is necessary. It's going to focus on him anyhow. Adam, go ahead.
Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, Daniel and Janet and Brad and Senator Hoylman and Brian Kessler and Councilman. Anyway, this is quite a esteemed panel, so I'll try to cut to the chase. So I represent injured cyclists and pedestrians. I've been doing it for 25 years. I see the carnage that reckless driving, that motor vehicle violence causes to pedestrians and families and devastates people. So I see that firsthand. I've been noticing lately, I commute to work from Brooklyn to New York by bicycle, and I've noticed over the last year or so a phenomenon that is very worrisome, that appears to be growing, and that members of the NYPD as well as other city employees, I've even seen sheriff's vehicle have been conducting, which unfortunately is obscuring license plates, with leaves, with actual covers that you can purchase on the internet. They scrape off the lettering. There's even like there's the spray paint you use that's clear, but apparently toll cameras and red light cameras and speed cameras, when they flash, they reflect off of this thing. You can actually see it, look closely. There's so many clever ways. I mean, there's also retracting ones that are even on a higher tech level across the boards that people are using. People are doing paper plates, handwritten paper plates. I mean, it's kind of out of control, and it's worrisome for a lot of reasons, particularly for two main reasons, I would say. One is the level of city and state employees that are doing this. I think it looks bad on city employees. It looks bad on the NYPD. I don't think everyone in the NYPD does it, but if I were a cop and this was out there occurring, I would feel it's against my badge, and it's not cool. But anyway, so two things. One is that it's widespread, and two is it's not being enforced by the NYPD. And again, listen, I like to hear this discussion, because I'm one of these people. I don't think the NYPD should be. I think the solution is not to have the NYPD doing a lot of things. Let them focus on real, active crimes and whatever. This could be allocated to someone else. But 311 doesn't work. 311, I've tried 311. Lots of my colleagues have tried 311. I recently took it upon myself and some of you know, it got a lot of media attention. I took a piece of plastic that was covering up a license plate in the rear. I removed it. The driver got out of the car, said, "I'm calling the police." I said, "Great, call the police." The police, 78th precinct where I live, showed up. We had a discussion, civil discussion. I explained what they were doing, what this guy was doing. They promptly arrested me. They slapped me in handcuffs. First time I've ever been arrested. So I explained that they asked me why I did this and why did they call 311. I said, you know, I've called 311. They open and close these cases. They don't do it. Anyway, got arrested. The charges ultimately got dropped. You know, it's like ridiculous. We had a meeting. We had a big, I think, I'm not sure if Ryan was there, but a lot of folks were there. Andrew Bernardis, we had a big press conference. We calling attention to it. A lot of folks, Gersh Kunstman is taking it to a level of, you know, a theater, advocacy theater. And it's like, on the one hand, it's funny, it's hysterical. He's brilliant. On the other hand, it's absurd, it's ridiculous. And every politician who showed up at that press conference said, this is ridiculous. Why is this even an issue? So I guess not only is putting aside the revenue, because surely you put in your thing thousands. We're not talking thousands, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. And that's why I think Brad has an interest, not only as actually a humongous safe streets advocate when he was my city council member, and the Reckless Driver Accountability Act, I witnessed firsthand. Brad helped craft and push that law through, a Reckless Driver Accountability Act that is getting completely undermined by not only not putting the city's not putting appropriate resources towards it, and they have lots of excuses. They're not putting proper resources towards it, but also this ghost plating. I'll lump it all into ghost plating. Some of them are totally fake plates, out-of-state plates, paper plates. It's epidemic, but some of them, like I said, are just blatantly absurd. It's undermining Brad's wonderful bill. There's no memo going out that I'm aware of. I've been actually working with the city, with folks in DOT and in the mayor's office, and I've been trying to get their attention. And I think they get it. It's not that complicated. It's an important issue. And my ask of them was like, where's the memo? Where's the memo from the mayor to the police precinct commanders that if we see this, we'll give people notice, but we're not going to tolerate this conduct by the members of New York's finest, and city employees, whether it's FDNY, the strongest, the bravest, sanitation, whatever other agency. I think that memo should go out. But unfortunately, you know, we look to the police, we put them up on a pedestal. I understand, you know, that they are enforcing the law. So when people who are charged, whether it's the NYPD or the sheriff's office, are charged with upholding the law, and they are blatantly committing this, and they're not enforcing this, it sends a horrible message. And as a cyclist and a pedestrian, I'm more anxious and scared riding my bike on the streets of New York. And this has got to stop. So I'm looking to the political officials here in government. Brad Lander, there's a big piece, not only streets safety piece, but also the budgetary piece, because we're all paying for it in one way or another. If other people are skipping out on paying their fair share of all of the roadway expenses and the bridges and the tunnels, then the rest of us are eating that. So this is compelling. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, and I know Andrew Bernardis has sponsored something. I think Eric Botcher sponsored something. I'd love to have some sort of a task force. This is not only, but CB2, big impactful community board. So I'd like to listen to you guys about what you suggest. Thank you. Hope I didn't talk too long.
Okay, well, thank you, Adam. And now we're going to go on to our panel. And first up is Eric Botcher, Council Member Eric Botcher, who's sponsoring legislation in the council addressing this issue. And by the way, who also represents Eric's in CB2. So Eric, can you tell us about the council's approach?
I'd love to give the controller the opportunity to go first in the rank of seniority.
That's very generous of you, Eric, but having seen you defer to your colleagues on several calls already this week, and knowing that this is your way, since I'm in your home turf, you go ahead. I'm here.
Thank you so much, Brad.
Okay,
and
thank you, Brad Lander.
Thank you. And I really want to thank you, Adam, for your activism. And it was just horrible what happened to you for doing something that is a life-saving act, which is removing one of these devices from the license plate. And they are ghost license plates. They're ghost cars, and they're extremely, extremely dangerous. And, you know, last year, the mayor had a big press conference about it, and with Amazon, where they, Amazon apparently agreed to put up some kind of warning on the screen if you are from New York trying to buy one of these. But I believe that you can still buy them on Amazon. We're not seeing the enforcement that we need to see. And we don't really even know the full extent of the problem, which is why I introduced a bill that would require the Department of Transportation to post all the data of unreadable license plates from speed cameras and school cameras on its website every month. Up till now, the data that we do have is a result of FOIL requests. This would require them to proactively and regularly post it. That would help us fully understand the issue better and also understand the trend lines, and are things working, and or are they not? And what do we need to do better? So that is a bill that I introduced in the fall, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get a hearing on it shortly. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk about that.
Okay, well, thank you, Eric. And now it is Brad Lander's turn, Controller Brad Lander. And we understand that you have a lot of concerns about this issue. And can you share your concerns and what you think should be being done?
Thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you, Eric, to Community Board 2, and a big thank you to Adam for raising this issue so loud and clear and pushing the whole city to pay attention to it. And as he said, this is really a very serious issue for a lot of reasons. And I really do thinking of these as ghost cars. There's no reason to have this other than to evade responsibility, to be able to speed past speed cameras, to be able to run red light cameras with impunity, and when congestion pricing goes into effect, to avoid congestion pricing charges. Like, there's no other reason. Like, some things might have a harmful consequence, but they have a good reason in the first place. Like, you might put tinted windows on your car to avoid the police from seeing you're in your car, but like, at least it would keep you cool in the sun, and the paparazzi couldn't take your picture. This has no positives at all. Like, this is simply for scofflaws to be able to break rules and laws with impunity, avoid responsibility, and avoid paying. So it really is like, we just can't let that be. The city did a study. The only information we have so far comes from the city.nyc, the news source. They did a FOIL request, and DOT gave them information from March 2020 to April 2022. They found 1.5 million incidents of drivers using obscured plates to evade fines from speed and red light cameras. That it has gone up substantially. It always had been an issue, but it was about 1% of vehicles evading cameras in 2016, and it had gone up to 4% by 2021. DOT said that for that period of time, it represented a loss of $75 million that would have been collected. The 1.5 million incidents is just drivers using obscured plates, not necessarily that they were speeding or running a red light at the time. But the 75 million was an estimate, or I guess maybe not even an estimate, was a calculation of drivers with obscured plates who had run red lights and run speed cameras for $75 million. We are following this up. We do audits and investigations, and so I don't have anything to report tonight. Our audits and investigations are thorough and sometimes take a while. So at some point in the future, we will be able to come back to you with some more official numbers. It is something that we are currently looking at. In the context of the camera program as a whole, which I do think it's worth remembering, has been tremendously successful. Like, on the one hand, unfortunately, the pandemic elevated a lot of dangerous and reckless driving. And of course, we've all seen that a lot of places. And so crash fatalities are 20% higher than pre-pandemic levels. That's not true. That's not only in New York City, it's true all across the country. But since speed cameras were turned 24/7 last August, violations have dropped by nearly a third. The evidence is clear that speed cameras get drivers to slow down and red light cameras get drivers not to run red lights. To some extent, that is largely, I don't want to say confined to the areas where the cameras are. Drivers learn where the cameras are and they slow down and don't run those red lights. And that's better than if they sped and ran those red lights. And there's some evidence that it has broader salutary behavior as well. But obviously, if there's a set of people who are just ignoring the rules, it doesn't help. And in some ways, once you have these defaced plates and you're signaling you intend to speed and run red lights, and I'm sure there's not really proof of this because we don't have the information, but there's every reason to believe people like speed more and run red light cameras because they got these defaced plates and it is their intention to do so. And this really gets to the what we call the Reckless Driver Accountability Act, or the Dangerous Vehicle Abatement Program. The idea of that program was to say, most people, they don't, when they get a ticket or, for speeding or running a red light. And I'll just be honest about myself, because you guys all read those articles in the Post. So you know that I got some speed camera violations and I'm not proud of it. But like when it got exposed in the New York Post, you better believe I'm like, I better slow down. And most people, they just don't want to get a ticket. But a pretty small percentage of extremely reckless drivers just speed or run red light cameras over and over and over again. And if you look at the data, that top 1, 2, 3, 5% are really just so reckless that it's kind of scary to look at their behaviors. And of course, there's every reason to believe. And so the idea of the Dangerous Vehicle Abatement Program, which was to say, if you're in that top 1% of most reckless drivers based on running speeding at speed light cameras or running red lights, then you're going to have to go take one of these programs that shows you the potential consequences of doing it. And if you don't take that course, the sheriff could impound your car. And the sheriff has, Adam mentioned that we haven't had as much enforcement as we want, but hundreds of people have taken the classes, and there have been, not a ton of impoundments, but there have been, I think it's a dozen or 15 car impoundments. So it's possible to get your car impounded because you did not follow the Reckless Driver Accountability Program. But of course, what the whole program is designed around is the idea that the most reckless drivers have to be held accountable. And if it's likely that there's an overlap between the folks who have ghost cars, who have faced their plates, and the most reckless drivers, so that even if it's only 4% of total cars going by those cameras, it's likely to be a much higher percentage of the most reckless drivers that program was designed to hold accountable. So it really is a critical issue. And I guess just the last thing I'll say here, which points more toward the hopeful, what can we do about it, is that you may have heard in the mayor's state of the city that he announced an intention to pursue legislation in Albany for accountability for reckless driving. And we have wanted some steps forward there because, for example, there ought to be some point past which if you run red lights and speed, your license could be suspended, but only the state can do that, not the city. So I think there's an opportunity here. There's work to be done to bring folks together at the city and state level to address some of the gaps in our reckless driver enforcement. Think about folks who drive with suspended licenses and at what point their cars get impounded. Think about how many red light cameras or speed cameras you have to have before your license gets suspended. And I think we should add to that, how do we approach the really challenging issue of ghost license or ghost car enforcement? Obviously, it's not easy to do because you can't catch the people with the speed cameras and the red light cameras because they've effaced their license plates to prevent you from doing it. But there might be other creative ways. And I'll just mention one here, although I'm interested in what our friends from the Sheriff's Office and NYPD have to say here. But one idea that came to me, and Adam and I worked together on the Dangerous Vehicle Abatement Program. That program is enforced by the Sheriff's Office. They have a fleet of cars, a few dozen cars that have license readers, cameras on all four corners of the car, and they drive around, and that's how they find the cars that haven't paid their parking tickets and are scofflaws and have to get towed. And it's also how they find cars who have triggered the dangerous vehicle abatement program because they've sped so many times or run red light cameras. And I would imagine those cameras could be adjusted to identify defaced plates. And of course, then the sheriff's fleet that's right by that, that would find it. It wouldn't be like a static camera where the car was months ago before you see it. The sheriff's car would be right there by the defaced plates, and perhaps there's something we could do at that point, whether that's booting or some other strategy that might help us address. And maybe we could put that into the package with some of the legislation that the mayor referred to in Albany as part of his State of the City, with Eric's bill, with a sort of 2.0 on the Reckless Driver Accountability Act, and take some really good next steps forward in helping bring down the costs and the harm of reckless driving.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
One more thing, I'm sorry, I just meant to say,
Okay, please.
my senior policy advisor on transportation, Sindhu Bharadwaj, who put most of that together, is here in the meeting as well. And so I hope folks get to know her, and she can introduce herself in the chat so people can look forward to working with her in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sindhu, also. And now we're going to be moving on to State Senator Brad Hoylman's office. And I think I saw Carolyn Wexelbaum is here. And I'm just wondering if who's behind the Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel photo? Is there somebody joining us there? Oh, it's Senator Brad
Yes.
Hoylman Siegel. Well, thank
Yes.
you for joining us. And knowing that a lot of these regulations come out of the state, we thought your participation was really important. So we wonder if you could just give us some kind of overview about what that legislation has been talking about. And also we've been hearing some things about Governor Hochul talking about extending some of the fines and so on. So please go to it.
As you can see, I'm on a train, an Amtrak back to Albany.
That's yep.
Let me, so I'm sure my connection is gonna peter out here any second, probably right when I get to the good stuff.
Thank you for joining us.
No, yes. And of course, please feel free to blame Albany for all of these problems.
Yeah, it looks like Senator Hoylman Siegel is not coming through.
The worst cell service on the eastern coast is Albany, New York. It's like,
I think it's probably fair.
Oh, there he
neighbor,
is.
So we see
Okay,
each
there
other a
you
lot.
go.
The controller. Once, am I petering out already? I'm sorry. It's likely to happen, but let me just say quickly that today the governor did announce in her budget address a proposal as part of this year's executive budget that's going to allow the State Department of Motor Vehicles and law enforcement to go after those who purposefully obstruct their plates in order to avoid paying tolls and confiscate materials that prevent collection. I'm still reviewing the details, but it's intended to enhance law enforcement's ability to crack down on this, and I strongly support it. The second thing I'll mention is that there is legislation pending in Albany, as I think was mentioned by.
Oh, we lost him again.
Also fraudulent. Yep.
Could you tell us again about legislation pending in Albany? We lost that one, Brad.
Yes. S9496. I'm a co-sponsor. It will direct municipalities to create a program for bystander reporting of obstructed, stolen, false, or fraudulent license plates. And bystanders would receive 25% of all fines. Fines for illegally obstructed plates are up to $300. That was increased the last legislative session. Maybe we need to increase that more. I'd be interested to know what your panelists and what your and what the board thinks about that. Because I think $300, you know, when you're talking about $75 million to $100 million of lost revenue. And the second thing, violations related to stolen, false, or fraudulent license plates would be misdemeanors for the first offenses and Class E felonies for the second or subsequent offenses. And bystanders would receive 25% of the proceeds of fines within 10 years. So that's the Epstein bill, along with Senator Bernardus, that I co-sponsor. So hopefully between those two proposals and anything else we might come up with tonight, I'd love to sponsor a bill to crack down on this nonsense that's costing taxpayers and making our streets less safe. Let me finally point out there is a package of bills called the Safe Streets Act. Assemblymember Glick and I sponsor a number of bills in that package. We hope to pass the entire package this year. Albany has taken a lot of steps in recent years, including the expansion of red light cameras, particularly around schools, but we need to do a lot more, including passing Sammy's Law, which would allow cities to lower the speed limit on side streets. We have a mandatory minimum speed limit in the state of New York, 25 miles per hour. We need to lower that so New York City can take advantage of it, particularly when it's open streets or street calming measures that necessitate a lower speed limit. Thank you. I hope I didn't cut out too much.
Thank you very much. And yes, that's really interesting information, a lot of which I don't know that many of us knew about. And now we're going to wind up with the NYPD. And we have with us tonight Sergeant Michael Corrado. And he is the Neighborhood Coordination Officer Supervisor from NYPD's First Precinct. And actually, the First Precinct does cover a portion of CB2. And it also includes an area that has a significant number of obscured license plate incidents occurring. So we'd love to hear your impressions of the existing conditions there. And also, if you can let us know how you guys are handling it.
Hello, everyone can hear me?
Yes,
Good.
very
Okay.
well.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Michael Corrado. I'm the Neighborhood Coordination Sergeant here in the First. What are we doing for license plate covers? Enforcement. Our traffic safety officers are out there every day targeting vehicles. Year to date, we've issued 29 summonses for obstructed plates, plate covers, missing plates. Our public safety officers are out there targeting temp tags and forged plates, made numerous arrests on those. I do believe our legal options are somewhat limited with the toll evasion. I think that's more MTA with TBTA. I've conferred with our legal bureau on this. Unfortunately, I believe the existing case law regarding theft of service not applying to, it applies to like food services, taxi rides, utilities, gas, electric cable, but I don't believe it mentions the use of highways to the speed cameras. I mean, if they capture your plate, you get a summons by mail. If you obscure your plate, unfortunately, you beat us that day. But back to the enforcement, our officers are out there every day writing summonses. It is on our radar. We have been targeting it, conducting car stops. We can confiscate the vehicle for the obstructed plates. I can't really speak to speak about the MTA and Port Authority too much, but I do know like 2 weeks ago, the New York Post, I believe, did an expose. They did a crackdown where one scofflaw had close to $60,000 in outstanding fines. They confiscated his vehicle. You can't get the vehicle back until you pay it. So I do know MTA and Port Authority, I believe they do crackdowns almost on a daily basis with a hot sheet of their most prolific toll violators. They confiscate the vehicles and release them when the fines are paid. I think I kind of touched on, I guess, what we're doing here in the First for it.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we also have someone else from NYPD who is Sergeant Joe Matola, and you're from the 5th Precinct, Joe. So can you give us a little bit of your experience from the 5th Precinct?
Yes, hi. I'm Joel Matola. I am the NCO sergeant here at the 5th Precinct. We cover part of Soho, Chinatown, Little Italy, those areas. As far as plates, I know for a fact my public safety officers are out there constantly. The public safety officers, they're the officers that drive around in the unmarked police cars, and they're looking for more of the violent crimes. And they're constantly, I mean, that's their target audience is the plate obstruction and the temporary plates and the fake plates. And I think like year to date, maybe for the past year, I think we have maybe like 50 or 40 arrests just for the fake plates alone. And they also seem to bear fruit. These people that are using the fake plates also end up having a bunch of other things like the drugs, guns, knives, other things. So it's not even just the fake plates. It actually, it's producing even better results. As far as summonses issued, our traffic safety guys, they're just as good. I think the year to date, let me see, about 40 summonses just for like obstructing plates. That's not including unregistered vehicles. Unregistered vehicles, they did like over 100. Just for that, but just plate obstructions about 40. So I mean, they're out there, they're doing it. Trying to think what else. And the issue with some of our officers maybe having obstructed plates. It's actually, we have integrity control lieutenants that work here at the precinct, and they oversee all the officers' cars. And in the event that one of the officers does have an obstructed plate, they're usually issued what's called the command discipline, where they'll actually lose vacation days, and which is a for them if they, in the event that they did have some sort of obstructed plate. I think I touched on everything. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Okay, I think that actually we have come to the end of our presentation. So I thank you all very, very much. And now we're going to go to questions for our panel. So please hang out, you guys, so you can answer some of our questions. And as I said before, the committee goes first. And I think to start it all off, our Vice Chair, Dan Miller, is going to ask a couple of questions.
Well, thanks so much everyone for attending. I think a lot of my questions were touched upon that I didn't have clarity on. I thought Brad actually came up with some great ideas. There's that running engine law where a citizen can actually report a running engine and actually get a piece of the fine. I think that's a terrific way, because when Adam, brought this to my attention, I started walking down the streets. It seemed like every block had an obscured license plate. And I guess my question is twofold for NYPD, which I understand that where Adam ran into trouble wasn't in your precinct. And I'm in the first right now, and I applaud you guys for the work you do here. But there obviously was a failing in where Adam was, where he was a citizen. He called 311. Patrol came there and then arrested him rather than the city employee who had the obscured license plates. And I guess, Adam, if you could just throw some more detail on the individual who had multiple arrests and multiple fines before the obscured plate. I don't know if that was in an article that I read, but maybe just kind of talk about how what we can do as citizens, I guess, right now in which to report license plates that are obscured, what we can expect from it, because in your testimony you said calling 311 wasn't very effective. But I do, and maybe the NYPD can actually give us some direction on how, if we see something, how we can say something.
Well, thanks, Daniel. I don't want to get into the specifics of my case right now. There's actually pending litigation going on with that, so I probably shouldn't comment on it, nor do I think it would be instructive to this group. I think the frustration, you asked what citizens can do, and that's really, we're being creative out there. Gersh Kunstman's being creative. We're on Twitter. We're calling attention. I don't love the idea of shaming. No one's trying to shame, but I feel like that's kind of a level of advocacy that we feel like, hey, if we're not getting anything, there is some shaming going on. There's some shaming to the NYPD. There's shaming of the mayor's office. I don't like that as a tactic. I'd like the NYPD to support this. Unfortunately, and I appreciate the officers who are on this again. And what I do hear from the city, the mayor's office, and I understand, there's certain priorities. And again, like I said, I think one of the problems is that we put way too many tasks. NYPD are there to do everything. Emotionally disturbed individual, homeless person, defaced plates, traffic. So I do think on a larger picture, we need to get out of that. I would like to see the NYPD really measure up to what was suggested here, both in terms of policing their own and making sure that Gersh Kunstman can't just go travel to 3 or 4 different precincts, or any of these other guys. There's a guy named Sal. There's a whole bunch of folks out there who are shaming and embarrassing NYPD. Now, again, if NYPD doesn't care and they think it's a big joke, I don't think so. Again, if I were a police officer, I'd be offended by that practice by a handful of people in my precinct. I wouldn't want people doing that in my law office, and I wouldn't want them to do that and blemish the NYPD reputation. So I don't think the citizens can do anything right now. The other thing with the police, I think there is nothing we can do with parked vehicles. You would think like it's low-hanging fruit. I mean, it was interesting that Brad suggested there is technology out there. The sheriffs, they can, my understanding, they can sweep and identify some of these ghost vehicles. Whether the Department of Finance and the mayor's office is funding that endeavor or not, whether they want to put it out there, because for all the folks on this side of, we think on the right side of this issue, I think that there's folks who are pushing back, whether they think, we're not getting paid enough as city employees, this is a perk of the office, whether it's placard abuse or whether it's let us deface plates. I mean, but the brazenness and the blatantness, it's nothing subtle about this, and it's at every precinct. I could go out right now. That's not cool. And again, unfortunately, I hear from DMV and even NYPD, they say, well, if they're parked, there's no crime that I'm aware of. And that's why I asked in the chat, what is the summons? Because I get the pushback that, in my particular case, I asked them when I was being led away with handcuffs, I asked the officers very politely and civilly, I said, well, at least did you give that gentleman a ticket for obscuring the plate? And they finally got back to me. They didn't answer me. Finally, the police officer said, well, we didn't observe it. I said, what do you mean you didn't observe it? I showed you a photograph. And so I understand there's a working rule with the NYPD, this sort of, when it comes to criminality, if they don't necessarily have to observe it, depending on, obviously they don't observe murders and whatnot that go on, and they arrest people. But if it's a violation of the VTL, if they don't observe it, my understanding, you guys can correct me, Police Officer Corrado and Motolo, if you don't observe a VTL violation, which this arguably falls within, and the vehicle is parked, it's not being driven. I don't see you guys issuing any summonses to park vehicles. And I've heard from DMV when I said, even the citizens, I said,
And you might want to give them a NYPD.
That's all. Sorry.
Okay. But thanks.
That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Sergeants Corrado and Mottola, do you want to address anything of that's said?
So-
You don't have to. If you don't want to.
No. So Adam, again, this call, I believe, I understand your frustration with the placards. Well, not with the placards as much as the obscured plates. We are taking a proactive approach in summoning these vehicles. And as Officer Mottola had alluded to, some of these obscured plates, when we stop them, if they're suspended or something, we bring them back for further investigation. And if an arrest is to be made, it is. If an inventory search in a vehicle, because it's going to be vouched, is done, sometimes there are, sometimes some things are recovered from that vehicle. So we are kind of chopping away at the tree of, like, we are addressing the plate covers. With that, we're addressing other quality of life that addresses from it. We're recovering weapons from the vehicles. We are issuing summonses. I really can't speak to the police officers because, as Officer Mottola had mentioned, there are many layers of oversight on the NYPD, specifically at the precinct level. You have ICOs that are tasked with going around the perimeter of the command. if they address it, if they see it, it is addressed. There's no kind of, there's no covering it up, if you will. So with that, I mean, I could only speak to the first precinct. I know our integrity control officer is out there on a daily basis. He is monitoring it. He's aware of it. As far as enforcement from the outside, we are tasked with a great deal. Bicycles, a big problem also with the plate covers. The same folks that are mentioning the plate covers to us, the same folks are also mentioning the bicycles on the sidewalks. It seems like as a few people had mentioned that since COVID, there was an uptick, I guess, and we're trying to get a handle on that as well. We've issued more summonses than in years prior. So we are taking a proactive approach to get this under control.
Thank you for answering the question. And then you gave me 2 questions, right, Shirley? And I wanted to ask Brad.
Oh,
And just
sure.
yeah,
Yes,
just to
and then we
repeat.
have, I see we have several other committee members. With
And then
questions.
Natasha will be next, but so not only is it costing the city in revenue when it comes to tolls, but with accidents and injuries, is that figured into that? I think I heard $700 million. Is that figured into that cost, or is that even more exponentially? And I guess the question is, does the city get sued if a ghosted license plate and you can't catch the perp? Does the city pay for that injury, or is that an individual's responsibility?
Yeah, so these are good questions. The number I gave before that DOT had given the city was like lost, people that would have had to pay red light camera and speed cameras. That was 75 million. What the city pays out for crashes is claims when it's a city vehicle that has done the harm. So, and that's a pretty wide range of things. That could be, if whatever, a pedestrian got hit by a fire truck, or that could be if a sanitation vehicle hit your car and damaged your car. It's every year one of the highest categories of claims against the city. And we are looking at this in detail. It's the report that Cindy is currently working on. So I can give you like a preview. Over the last 5 years, the city has paid out about $600 million. So in excess of $100 million a year in crash claims. And it won't surprise you, the agencies that, have the highest crash claims are the ones with the highest number of vehicles. So it's sanitation, NYPD, FDNY, actually, I thought, is not on the road quite as much, even though when the trucks are out there, they're going fast. DOT and parks. And we're looking at, as part of that report, what the city can do to bring down the crash claims, both to bring down the crashes, so we just have fewer people hit and fewer vehicles hit, but also, of course, to save money. And DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, has made some changes to the fleet itself. Obviously, there's new technology that slows cars down when they're, when something is nearby. There's like a range of technologies, but they're being, rolled out into the fleet, but still not at a rapid scale. So we are going to be looking at that. That isn't exactly related to the effacement of plates. Like, obviously, all of those claims are against city vehicles, and we don't have a lot of evidence that city vehicles are the ones with the obscured plates. Adam has raised the question about city employees whose private cars are obscured, but those aren't city vehicles at the time they're driven. And if someone, so if you're hit, if you're in a crash with a non-city vehicle, then that driver's individual insurance is the one that you have to go after. And, obviously here, like, if I don't know what happens when you're at the scene of a crash and the person that you've been in a crash with has an effaced plate, and you go and say license and, I need to trade license and registration. And you try to say, well, what is your license plate number? It's not there on your license plate. I'm sure that's kind of scary for someone who's been in that crash, but we don't, that's not something that I think we've collected meaningful, it'd be hard to get that information. It's obviously more anecdotal.
Thank you very much. Natasha?
Hi, thank you. So my question's actually for both of the sergeants as well. First, thank you guys for coming tonight and thank you for everything you do for our community to keep us safe. I was curious if you guys, I know the jurisdictions are different between highways and city streets, but are you guys working with MTAPD and state troopers? Is there a centralized database to help with repeat offenders or help track travel patterns?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak to that. That's higher than like a precinct level. We've done joint operations with other NYPD units. But as far as maintaining databases and all, that's above me.
Got
Yeah,
it.
I'm sure that most of the law enforcement within the state has access to all the state information. And then we do, I guess, share like the criminal database is from the state, and obviously the car is the DMV, New York DMV. A lot of that stuff is kind of, I'm almost positive that all of the law enforcement within New York has access to that system to see.
Yeah, Caroline Wexelbaum, who's here from Senator Hoylman Siegel's office. Caroline, would you have any information on that? Because that is a New York State question. Are you there, Caroline?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Natasha?
Sure. I was just curious if between our red light cameras in the city, not congestion pricing, the cashless tolling cameras, if there's a centralized database.
Yeah. I am not familiar with one, but I can follow up. As far as I know, I don't think there is right now. It's a very good idea.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Okay, so on to Janet Liff, I do believe. Janet?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is for the sergeants also, and thank you very much for coming this evening. And you mentioned, perhaps it's just because the scaffolds are all over the city, but it becomes more glaring to us when we walk around and we notice, maybe because we're sort of more hurt by it when we see it on cars with placards. And you mentioned that you have these, these integrity control officers. Would it help, like, if we, because as I say, maybe it's a very small percentage, but it kind of hits us hard because the last person that you expect to break these laws is our civil servants. Should we bring, if we document, local, police vehicles that we see with obstructed license plates, for instance, could we contact the integrity control officers? Is that someone who interacts with the public? And would it be helpful for us to alert the police to these things when we see them?
I don't know about contacting them direct, but again, they're, 311, calling the precinct if you see something like that, and, we could remedy that. But they're proactive with their monitoring of the surrounding area of the precinct. It's something that they're required to do, I believe, on a daily basis.
So if we see problems, then it would be our responsibility.
It's happening. They're already, there's a Twitter page of someone that just takes photos of that. And like I said, once it's out there in public, the ICO, the integrity control officer, he will issue, like I said, the command discipline. And then these guys they'll lose vacation days. They get punished. It's not like it's going unpunished and it's out of control. It is definitely being addressed. Are there some people doing the wrong thing? Absolutely, of course. But at least here, I know for a fact that there's some people that have lost their vacation days because they want to do something like that.
Yeah, thank you. And so then we tweet at NYPD News. What's that?
You can, absolutely.
Is that seems to be the most effective? Okay.
Yeah. But
right,
we can also call you, right? We have your numbers. I mean,
Sure.
if it's something within the precinct, we could directly contact you by phone, right? Or email.
I have no problem addressing any of my officers here at the 5th.
Right. And Michael, Corrado, I guess the same with first precinct, right? That
Yeah,
we could
absolutely. I get
right in
calls.
touch with you.
I get calls from the community calls, emails from the community on a daily basis. And whatever we can do to help. But again, back to the plate covers that, we, from a enforcement perspective, we're out there every day. We are enforcing it. We understand it's a citywide problem. And, so we are on top of it.
Right. And
Thank
just for anybody who doesn't know, they all have web pages and all those numbers are listed there as well as the emails. So within that precinct, they're available. So
We go on
you may
to,
be hearing from us a lot, guys. Anyhow, so any more, Janet?
That's it. Thank you.
No, okay, so
Lois?
Lois Rakoff, please.
Yes, my question is, how does a civilian blow the whistle on a ghost license plate from a car that is parked and also that a car that is moving? I mean, how do you do that? How do you blow the whistle? Wait for the person who is parked to open the car, or wait there, or what? Just what do you do? How do you blow the whistle on a ghost plate?
I think 311 is your best choice. It's the best option available.
Yes, but how do you how do you describe it? What do you say? Oh, there's in a parking spot on such and such street.
Well, yeah, you would say in front of 100 Mulberry Street, there's a park with a obstructed plate. That's it. You wouldn't need more.
Okay, and what if
The moving
and
cars, that's very hard because you're going to call, let's say you call 911, right? And then it takes a few minutes. And then by the time we can get there, even if we get there like immediately.
impossible?
Yeah, like the car is usually gone, unfortunately.
And it's
okay,
right.
Don't do it, but that's usually what happens.
Because I was thinking of what Senator Hoyleman Siegel said about getting a percentage of money back for the fines, and how do you claim that? How do you even blow the whistle on that? Because it's almost impossible when you're riding around, or even if you're on a bike and you see a car with a ghost plate, you can't identify it. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part of it. We get, not even just for the ghost vehicles, we get crimes reported in general from saying a moving vehicle, and that's kind of where we have to, we get to that location as fast as we can, but there is a relay. There's a delay in the 911 system from when it's called in to when it's relayed to us. So really, all I could say, it really is a case-by-case basis. If we can get there in time and we view the violation, we'll certainly take enforcement action as we've done in the past. If the vehicle's not there, the officers will conduct a canvass. That's kind of, what we do regarding all violations and crimes. And, it is a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else on the committee? I see Adam, you're Adam Zeldin, who was able to log on.
Shirley,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I am late to community board 4, but
Oh dear. Okay.
but I really want to thank you for including me in this. Hope I provided a small contribution to it, and I really love the idea of the citizen reporting, Brad. And I know there's a bill that Lincoln Wrestler has that would allow people to report obscured or blocked bike lanes, like citizen reporting. So that's really exciting. And I really want to thank everyone for their interest, and you too, Comptroller Lander. You are the expert on this topic, so we're very lucky to have you working on this. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you, Eric, for giving us your input on your legislation. And you were saying that, just one question. What
Yes.
kind of timetable? Do you have any idea?
I just actually got a text back from the chair of the Transportation Committee who thinks that we might be able to get it done at one of the next meetings, hopefully even at the next Transportation Committee here.
Great.
So I'll share that with Community Board 2 when it's scheduled.
Thank you. Great. Thanks very much. And good
Thank
luck.
you.
I hope you get it up there quick.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so now, as far as other members of the committee, Adam Zeldin, are you available to talk? I see you have a lot of questions. Okay,
I'm having some trouble with my microphone. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
we hear you.
But
We
I'd like to
hear
know
you.
what precinct level policies are in place that determine when and when not to enforce obstructed or missing license plates. There have been scenarios where I've put in 311 complaints and then the officers mark it as no action necessary, or officers determine no action necessary, even for a vehicle parked on the street, missing license plates or with obstructive devices. That's question one. And then question number two, really quickly, is are there integrity control officers in each precinct? And if not, are there individuals within the precinct chain of command who perform that type of integrity control at the precinct location itself?
Yeah, I don't mind answering that. So actually, I can't speak for the 301s that you had, but there is a parking summons that can be issued for an obstructed plate or a missing plate. As far as why those officers didn't issue one at the time, I don't know. It could be a training issue. They might not know, because it's a code you have to, usually on the parking summonses, that has like the quick ones, like no standing, like fast ones, but there's other ones that we have to manually write in ourselves, and that's one of them. So it could be the officers are new, they don't know, and that might be an issue. So, I mean, that's my guess of probably what happened with the obstructed plate. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Adam, can you?
Second question is just about enforcement, at the precinct house itself. Are these integrity control officers, is there one?
Every single police officer in this department has to have an integrity control officer. We're required. So even if they're working in headquarters, there's an integrity control officer watching over that person in the headquarters. And every precinct has one as well. And it's usually a lieutenant, and then the lieutenant will almost always have an assistant who's a sergeant. And then they oversee all the integrity issues of the precinct. And like I said, when the cops do, get in trouble, they're penalized with vacation days, which, I don't know of many other jobs that do that, but we do.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask one follow-up, Shirley? And Sergeant Mottola, I think you're in the 5th precinct, and Sergeant Corrado is in the 1st precinct. I actually have a question about the 1st precinct. Today, I just walked by the station house, precinct house on West Broadway and Canal Street, and I noticed there was a vehicle, parked in the police parking area, and it had a front blur cover that blurs out the license plate. It also had a rubber device that blocks the ability to see the license plate from different wide angles. I guess given what I've heard tonight, it would seem that that would be immediately rectified because this is a priority for for the precinct. But it was my observation that the vehicle was just parked there in broad daylight. Again, given these penalties of losing vacation days, I can't imagine that any officer would in their right mind would do such a thing. So I'm trying to reconcile, how I was able to see that just, today. In front.
Do you know what type of vehicle it was?
Yeah, it was a Jeep.
Following this call, I'm going to go out right now and.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not trying to like focus on enforcement. I'm trying to understand the system. So, Yeah, it was just a great Jeep, but I really appreciate your.
Do you have a plate
sincere
number on it?
response there. Thank you so much.
Do you have a plate
Yeah, I
number?
do. HAN. Yeah. HAN 6448. Hotel Alpha November 6448.
Absolutely. I'm gonna follow up right after this call.
Really
Thanks.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thanks, Adam, and thank you, Sergeant Corrado. Thank you, Sergeant Matola, for this input. And I'm just wondering if anybody else on either the committee or CB2 members, because otherwise we're going to go on to our other guests. I think we've covered whoever has wanted to speak from CB2. So Dan, if you would like to take a look and see who of our
Sure.
guests would like to ask questions and call on
Promoting
them.
David Paul Gerber to be able to speak. You should be able to accept that, and you just did. So you have the floor. If you could just try to not comment too much and keep it to queries and questions, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for holding this meeting. I'll just make it short and sweet. All of New York City is a tollway zone, meaning you could be summoned first and then tolled. Since 1954, the New York State vehicle traffic laws allow that. So why can't these vehicles be tolled for any infraction after a summons? Why does it take 10 different bills, one each year, to do something about it? Last time I checked, Corey Johnson, former City Council Speaker Corey Johnson, proposed some bills, and of course they didn't work.
Okay, so can we get an answer to that?
As to why vehicles just aren't towed automatically with a summons?
All of New York City is a tollway zone, so why can't there be summonses and tolled? If my inspection sticker expires a minute past midnight, past the expiration date, I'm at risk of being summoned and tolled. So if I'm going to be applied that standard should be applied to every police officer, every firefighter, every correctional officer that uses illegal plate covers outside the tombs, everyone, including MTA employees, including one outside Stone Street, with New Jersey plates using plate cover.
So are we talking about just in general when a summons is issued towing the vehicle, or specifically police officers if we issue a summons to them?
I'm
sorry, I'm just not clear on the question.
But it's NYPD transport. If NYPD transport has level TEAs, they're assigned different levels. One does summonses, the other one drives around tow truck. So why can't that at least start with issuing summonses instead of these traffic enforcement agents ignoring them, just walking past them? I even flagged down traffic agents, and I pointed out a suspicious vehicle that had 10 Florida plates that had 2 flat tires right down by Pearl Street. That's been sitting there for what I was told a month. And traffic agents ignored.
David, I think if the point was actually handled by Senator Hoylman Siegel. He said that we need to create on a state level the ability to tow for this kind of violation, and he has something in the works. But it's a very important question, and it's something that we're going to be certainly incorporating into the resolution. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a very meaningful question, but I don't think that the NYPD is in the position to be able to answer that right now. Thank you.
Okay, so who's next, Dan?
And I just wanted to say, I know Mr. White has to leave pretty soon. So Zach, or if anyone else has a question for Adam, I know that he kind of has a hard out.
And I'm afraid I got to jump off as well, but I've really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to following up with all of you. And we'll have more to report going forward.
So guys, can you stick for one more question in case Zach has it for you? Give me just
one more question.
Minutes.
Yes.
Zach, if you could address either Adam or Brad, that'd be terrific. If not, then we're going to let him go.
Okay, this is actually a general question to whoever on the panel is most qualified to answer it. There's an issue not only with vehicles with obscured license plate, but vehicles completely missing license plates. And specifically over the last couple of years, there's been an increasing problem with motorcycles driving without license plates, frequently in bike lanes, speeding in bike lanes, creating unsafe conditions, running red lights. And there seems to be a lot of confusion as to what kinds of motorcycles need to be carrying license plates and need to be registered. But I've seen cycles without pedals, over 100 pounds, seemingly capable of going way over 20 miles an hour, way over 30 miles an hour, running without license plates. And it's increasingly common, and there appears to be no enforcement. So I guess my question, two questions. First of all, am I correct that even Class C motorcycles, which run at 20 miles per hour or less, do require license plates, assuming that they don't have pedals and are over 100 pounds? And second of all, what can be done to encourage enforcement of licensing regulations? Because right now, it's frankly, it's the Wild West out there. And if you're a bicyclist in a bike lane, you have these people coming up from behind you at high speed, and it is dangerous. Thank you.
I can personally speak from, I'm actually doing this myself, as I drive around out there with my cops and I try to get these motorcyclists with no plates. And it's not easy, you know, like we have a police car and they're on a, you know, like a scooter. They're very hard to get. I almost have to, you know, I've been using the unmarked police cars to have more of an advantage to try and jump out and get them. And then unfortunately, when I do confiscate the bike, you know, it's their property and they're allowed to come and get it as long as they come with like a tow truck or a means of taking it without riding it away. So like the bike is not actually taken. It's just, I guess we're just holding it until they can get a means to take it back from us. So it's not like a permanent solution. And you're right, it is very confusing. There's so many layers to does it have pedals? Is it this many cc's? Is it electric? And I think the state is really who needs to work on that. It makes things difficult for us. And I kind of agree with you. I feel like if I catch you with that bike and you have no intention of registering it, and I mean, maybe we should permanently confiscate it or figure out some other system. But as of right now, that's pretty much how it works. I go through the work with my officers. I'm running around out there and I'm grabbing them, and then they get the bikes back. And it's disheartening because I see them again out there at a later time.
Yeah, this is kind of a different situation. You know, Zach, I hear from Jeffrey, who I just promoted. He has a question specific for Adam and Brad. And then if you have another follow-up, I'll give that to you. So Jeffrey Rowland, if you don't mind asking your question.
Of course, thank you.
Hi, yeah, I have a 1989 Jeep, which I've been parking on the street here on Thompson Street for about 30 years. And I have a ball hitch because it's a pickup truck with a step bumper. And one time, 4 or 5 years ago, I was given a ticket for obstructing the license plate with the ball hitch. And I went down and explained to the judge, and the ticket was dismissed. But meanwhile, what I am concerned with is that the sudden thrust to ticket obscured plates will result in a lot of people who have plates like mine that are, you know, have a ball hitch in front of them, even though that's not on the front plate, that's just the back. And also plates that have the dealership plastic cover around the edges that partially obscures the New York getting tickets, when those are not really the ones that we should be focused on. We should be focused on the ones that are cheating the transportation system by not paying their tolls. And those should be stopped at the toll plazas when the camera doesn't respond immediately. Someone should be waiting on the other end to pull them over, because that's the problem. I don't want to see a lot of revenue get raised just because we have a problem and then we go about addressing it the wrong way. I have a couple of other quick issues. One is that I park and I move the car every week, every other day for alternate side of the street parking. And the problem, I believe, there is that the fine is too low. So a lot
Jeffrey, you're getting off. Jeffrey, you're getting off topic right now.
Okay.
So I would like to just stick to the first question.
Jeffrey. And also, it's only questions, Jeffrey.
Yeah. So we're gonna stick to your first question, which is a good one, and maybe it's an NYPD question, so it's not necessarily for Brad or for Adam who need to go. But is obscured license plates, as you know it, does it also about the hitch, the ball hitch that obscures a plate? Is that something that's a ticketable offense? If anybody can answer that?
Yeah, any obstruction to the plate, you can, like I said, you can issue a parking summons for it. So that is possible. I don't know who did that. That's a low blow, preying on the weak. I don't know who did it, but I apologize. It's the best I can really tell you. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, thanks. And then I'm going to go back to Zach. We cut short, but we did lose Brad and Adam. Do you have a question for the NYPD to follow up, Zach? Sorry for cutting you short.
Yeah, I guess very briefly, I mean, I agree. I think one of the issues here is that there is a tremendous amount of confusion about the licensing requirements for small motorcycles. And I think it would be extremely, my sense, I could be wrong about this, is that the beat cops who have to enforce this thing really don't understand all of the distinctions. It's a mess. And I don't know whether it's possible for one of our for action at the state level to simplify the regulations, or at the very least to promote some kind of very, very clear signage as to exactly what has to be licensed and what not. Because right now people at least think there are so many gray areas that it's a system that's just ready for abuse. Thank you.
It doesn't sound like it was a question, but it sounds like there's a comment.
Well, I guess the question, does anybody have any suggestions as to what can be done to help clarify these regulations?
I don't know if our two remaining panelists can answer that, but I don't know if anybody else is here who knows the answer to that. Yeah.
I can give an opinion. I don't know how much that helps or not. But I mean, I think you should be able to register anything with the state, and the state gets the money, and then it makes things easier for everyone else. I don't know why they have all these different restrictions, but they do.
Okay, thanks. We have Darlene Lutz. If you are ready to ask your question, I am going to be promoting you. You should be able to speak, or just, there you are, you're rejoining. And
hi, thank you. Thank you, Dan, and good evening, committee, and illuminating discussion on this. I'd like to give a special welcome to Michael Corrado, our sergeant who manages the sector cops. Soho is in Sector D, and they do a great job in our neighborhood. I understand a lot of the angles of this discussion. I was not comfortable by this discussion to begin with because of all of the media and its bloggers. It's not really, legacy media is not hammering at this like the bloggers are, that have really made this issue explode. And
could you make it into a question, please?
I'm wondering if this is really the position that the community board wants to take, whether Senator Hoylman Siegel wants to take right now, because as Zach Weinstein was mentioning, there are greater issues with two-wheeled vehicles right now that we should be paying attention to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. Is there anybody else down that wants?
I don't see anyone else. I think that that ends the conversation, unless Shirley, you have a question, because haven't heard from you, but are you set? Did you get it?
I just have one question to our precinct people, and that's, I'm just wondering how we as a community board can work with you to address this issue. If you can think of any ways, if you need us to report something, for instance, if you need our opinion about it, we sure would appreciate it, because we would love to interface.
So, no, we appreciate that. Listen, 311 is an excellent tool. 311 gets relayed to us. It's a quick response from our offices. If it's a police emergency, which, I mean, I don't know, maybe this would apply sometimes, call 911 and that'll be relayed to our offices. You can come in person to a precinct, call the precinct. There's a few ways to report it. It's just with these, because the vehicle is moving, it does hamstring us a bit with our response. And when we do respond, we do a canvas. We see if we could find whatever the call is for. We do try to obtain information on that and address it appropriately. But this is an issue also as Joe mentioned earlier. A lot of the we're guided by the rules that are set in place. So we can't just go about with independent action on it. So a lot of it is from our elected officials that we're guided by.
Okay, so thank you. And, I think that is it. There are no more questions, right, Dan?
I want to add one.
I guess.
Joe
sorry.
wants to say
Sorry, Joe.
something.
Yeah, please do.
So me and Michael, we have community council meetings every month.
Oh,
And
sure.
it's like a platform for people in the community to come and talk to us directly. So, kind of, I guess, similar to this Zoom meeting where you can address your concerns and we can work together and help you out. Unfortunately, the attendance at these meetings, I don't know about Michael's, but mine are, I think, kind of poor. So, I'd love to invite.
We have we do. I mean, Darlene's usually there.
Darlene is yours, right? Yeah.
We have a great community council. We invite as many attendees as possible. Captain Smith always loves it. Typically the topics that come up is traffic around the Holland Tunnel, which we always say if traffic is one of the leading complaints in the precinct, we're doing pretty good. So we encourage all to attend.
Be just down. I don't know. Do we announce those community council meetings and the days?
Darlene is really good at always coming to our meetings and announcing it, so we do get it from her, but I thought Lois was also on a community council one point.
And also, if I may
Yeah.
add, so on top of the community council meetings that we have once a month at the precinct in-house, our neighborhood coordination officers also do the builder blocks, and those are advertised on the police department's website. You get to talk with a cop one-on-one, and it's the cop that addresses the sector you're going for. So if, like Darlene alludes to Soho and Sector David. So when Sector David has their builder block, you come, any questions, concerns, complaints, or grievances, they're able to address in a one-on-one forum. And there's nothing like, these Zoom calls are great, but there's nothing like one-on-one contact. And
Seems like
sometimes there's sidebars.
For me and Michael here, but I get it. I mean, it's hard. I feel like the NYPD kind of has a shroud of mystery, and then you don't really get to know these things until you speak to us directly, which is hard.
Yeah. So
Usually
I'm glad we're speaking to you.
So why don't you guys announce your next community council meeting, and we can put it in our calendar if you know it.
Yes.
And we can put it on the CB2 calendar.
Yes.
February
For the
20
6th precinct as well.
So ours is February 23rd here in the 1st precinct, which is 16 Erickson.
February 23rd.
The
And
exact
again, any questions or concerns, you could always reach out to me. My email address is on the 1st precinct's website. And if you have any questions about anything going on in your sector, all the offices are listed there. So you shoot out an email to me and we get, we try to address it the best we can. And if we can't, we kick it up the food chain.
When does that meeting usually start? At the 1st, Michael?
That's 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah, mine is February 22nd at 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Yeah, and then
Is that on your websites too? Is that announced on your websites?
No, it's on the website. If you type in the precinct and you go to the precinct's page, it'll be at the bottom. It'll say community council meeting, where it is, what time it is.
Yeah, because if you think of it, just send us the announcements when they're happening, and we can get it onto the monthly calendar for the community board. Because there may be folks that really do want to come and interface. That would be great.
And I think surely we should put it in a resolution and make sure it's there so folks know that this is probably a place to have more impact and speak directly to the officers. So I think it makes a lot of sense. So we'll be sure to include that.
Great. So anyhow, I guess that's the end of the questions. And we're going to move into our business session. And as I said before, anyone is welcome to stay, but we are the ones then that do the talking. So anybody who wants to hang around and hear us or observe us talk about this issue, that's what's going to happen next. And we thank you. I think you two precinct people are the loyal remaining attendees of our panel. And we thank you very much for your attendance. And, maybe we'll be in touch too from time to time. And we do really want to make it clear about those community council meetings and, how they can get in touch. So we'll kind of talk to the chair and try to figure out how we publicize that. So thanks very much again. And Traffic and Transportation Committee, let's do our business session.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, folks. Look forward to seeing all of you guys February 23rd.
Thank you.
Right, every single one of us. And everybody who's attending.
Careful what you wish for.
But you'll
Have
never
a good
know who may come. You
That's
never-
fine.
All welcome. Take care, folks. Thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, so, golly, we have a lot of food for thought.
Sorry,
And-
Shirley, I'm not able to put my video on. I don't know if either of the hosts are able
Here,
to.
hold on a second. Yeah, I was
Oh,
just.
thanks,
just-
Dan.
Yeah, I
me
got you.
too.
Here you go. Who else would like their video on? That
Me, Dan.
Me
Oh,
too,
yeah, you have
Dan.
a video, Natasha?
everybody. Here we go.
I know I don't look great tonight, but you know.
Now there we go. Here's Amy.
Right, but did you say you have a video to show?
No, it's just to
No.
put the video on. When we were recording it, we had the panelists. If you have your video on and you're a panelist, then you're with everybody else. So I just wanted to make it clear. So we just saw the folks that were speaking and I thought it
Oh,
worked
okay.
really well. So does anybody else want their video on that doesn't have their video on? It looks like everybody is happy with their current status. So
Happy,
Okay.
happy.
So golly, a lot of food for thought, and I'm just wondering exactly how we should go from here. Janet and I took notes, so we're going to do the report. Dan's going to do the resolution, and I'm just wondering what points do we want to get across in our whereases, for one, because there are obviously problems that are happening. And we are being told, on the other hand, that the NYPD maybe is more aware than we thought, we hope. So anyhow, Natasha, you go first.
I'm sure it's obvious to everyone, but I think we should definitely include resolutions to support Senator Hoylman's bill, Councilmember Botcher's bill, as well as the governor's proposed legislation. I haven't seen any formal text on that, so I'm happy to draft something up that says something to the effect of, that we support any effort from the governor's budget to increase penalties on obscured license plates, pending
Right,
a formal bill. So I'm happy to put those three together, whatever you prefer. And
So that would be our resolve, would be that, therefore be it resolved that we support da 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 and da 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 da. You know what you mean. Do we want to describe those bills then? In a sentence or two. We'll say, whereas Senator Hoylman.
yeah, I mean, typically on the
proposed-
legislative websites, they'll have like a 2-sentence summary. I'm happy to pull those just so it's the exact language.
Okay.
And then I can send it to you and Dan if that works as a draft.
And Janet too.
Is that-
And
Three of us.
Janet, yes,
That'd be good.
absolutely.
So we'll pull out the legislation. Right, I think you don't have to do it for the Botcher bill because we do have that.
Oh,
And I
great.
did
Okay.
Circulate that to the committee. Because that's
Okay.
out of council. And for the time being, that's what it is. It's a bill.
Okay,
Nothing
great.
further. But Brad Hoylman Siegel was talking about some legislation that he's even thinking he wants to propose.
Mhm.
And maybe we can say something about that as well. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Are you suggesting the legislation around us being able to report, citizen reporting of these issues?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
there's a few bills that we know there's a template for that.
Yeah, he was rifling off a bunch. It was too bad we didn't get the clear feed, but
Yeah.
maybe what we can do is check back with his office and get specifics so that we can include it, review it, and then include it.
Okay, I can do that. I can check Brad's office for the specifics of what he's planning and what is existing. Because there are certain requirements in New York State bills right now against obscured license plates and the like. But obviously it can use some finessing as well. And you guys should have that. I sent all that to you. So you should have that information. Okay. So, I mean, I think we have to state the problem, right? So that would be one of the first things, you know, whereas, because I guess the problem is first that it's tremendously endangering. I mean, if you can't identify who the scofflaws are,
Yeah.
you can't get them off our streets. So the
Right.
problem-
Dangerous.
Well, also that there's been a somewhat precipitous increase. They said it went from 1% to 4%. And likely that the people who obscure their plates are doing it for an intent or reason. You don't obscure your plate if you follow the law, if you intend to follow the law.
Right, exactly. So that I think that the two sergeants from the two precincts were referring to the idea that when you get to these people who obscure the plates, you find that they're also obscuring other things.
Yep.
Like drugs and guns, weapons, whatever. So that might be something also to include. So that would be obscuring not only the plates, but the crimes.
But the
Right.
crime itself, the
Other
first crime
crimes.
that they're obscuring is the crime of speeding and going through red light cameras. I think.
The drugs and the weapons and whatever else, but evidently they seem to go hand in hand. You seem to be right about that.
But I think the recent uptick is really targeting, is trying to not pay tolls. And there's definitely a cottage industry and people avoiding tolls and tickets.
Okay. So
Right. And speeding and red lights and just not paying. It's very scary, especially if there's a hit and
So
run.
they're cheating the city of money too, obviously.
But they're hurting
And I
civilians.
gather lawsuits also come about because the people who were injured by these scofflaws, if you want to call them that seems like a nice word, often end up, you know, bringing suits against the city because they have no other way to collect. So that's another aspect.
There's also the, you know, the injuries that happen that don't have a price tag on them, and the injustice that's done because of that. You know,
right.
So you know, what happened the other day was a cyclist went into that cargo bike and the license plate was obscured. They didn't stop for the traffic ticket and didn't stop for the accident. They're gone. And as Brad Lander said, you're pretty much left empty-handed. There's no one to sue. So the city doesn't take over that bill. Is actually, you just have to take care of your own medical expenses. But Adam, did you want?
And I
Oh, let's hear what Adam has to say while we see his hand raised. Adam, can we still hear you?
He's muted.
He wrote something in
you're
the chat
muted.
as well. He also wrote something in the chat.
Oh, okay. So should we look in the chat and see? Oh, and Janet, why don't you finish up and then we'll look in the chat for Madam.
While we're discussing penalties, I
bad.
don't know, it seems to me that it's sort of an egregious enough thing to do because you're obviously intentionally intending to break the law. You know, and the gentleman brought up the ability to tow. I don't know, is it too extreme to recommend that the penalty for an obstructed license plate is automatic towing?
I think that we have to follow Brad's bill because the city can't tow it because it's a state issued license plate. So when we support Brad's bill in getting the state involved, we can recommend that it should allow the city to tow this, but the state has to come from the state.
Okay, so can we,
You
is
need a
that,
state allowing the city to tow, okay.
so if we can, people feel comfortable recommending that?
100%.
Yes, sure.
Yes.
You know, okay, we can usually tell just by the obstruction, say by the little leaf or whatever covers or paint or some plastic. So, I wonder what you do about fake license plates altogether. We can't identify that they're fake. I wonder how you go about.
Well, there's another issue that we just kind of talked about, Shirley, which is there's these paper plates. And if you look at a paper plate and it's issued in New Jersey, and then you go to the front windshield and then you see it's has a registration from the same year, but it's issued in New York State, it's a fake. It's a scofflaw. And that happens a lot. And one of the officers mentioned the paper plates, and I even think that Brad
Yes.
Lander mentioned it. Yeah. But I think we should put that in the resolution too. It's not only obscured license plates, but fake paper plates.
Right. So the remedies. Let's see what Adam did say in the chat. Does anybody else want to read it besides me? Sometimes I can't get the whole thing.
Sorry, I can say what I was gonna say. My connection.
Oh,
seems better
great.
now.
I thought you were gone. Are you still on the plane,
Sorry.
Adam?
Indeed, I am. So
Oh,
I
dear.
can't complain that I'm able to
A
actually
labor of
participate.
love. Okay, Adam, tell us your thoughts.
Thank you. Just thinking about enforcement, and while I really appreciate the words that we heard from the two sergeants tonight, I think that everybody's witnessed sort of a breakdown in enforcement. So we may wish to consider a proposal to shift enforcement out of the NYPD altogether, perhaps to the DOT. I don't know if that was discussed before I joined. I know I was 45 minutes late. I apologize, but if the DOT controlled, non-moving violations, stationary violations, that could potentially improve enforcement quality.
I would
I'm not so
be
keen on
hesitant to do
DOT
that.
these days.
No,
They
I
didn't even
actually,
join this panel.
I actually think it's a good idea to get enforcement out of the NYPD. I don't know.
Great.
The question, I guess, is whether or not we include that here, but we would be better off if DOT did all the enforcing.
Yeah, no,
Except that
we might
DOT
be,
is
but
just not ready. I'm sorry, Dan.
yeah, I was just gonna say they didn't attend the meeting. I didn't speak at it, Adam. I think it'd be really misguided at this point. We should lay our expectations of the NYPD. And if that doesn't work, then we can follow it up in a different way. But I just think that I would be very hesitant to write a resolution that would include that. So I would unvolunteer for the resolution if that was necessary.
I would go along with you, Dan. I really tried to press DOT to participate. They didn't want to. They felt they had nothing to do with it. But it isn't only that. DOT at this point right now is severely short-staffed. My understanding is that a lot of their time is taken up with removing sheds and trying to develop some kind of guidelines for the sheds. And they're not taking care of the things they have to take care of right now. So I think that if we wanted to have it, Janet, what you're saying is you'd love to see a uniform approach. Okay, maybe someday. Right now, not the time for DOT. I think that the NYPD is much better equipped right now.
Okay, would it
Shirley,
be?
Yes, Lois.
could we recommend that the PD have a special unit, create a unit to address these issues of these ghost plates and paper plates and obscure plates, and to keep it within the police department?
Well, I think they did mention that early on. They're traffic safety officers, and they also
Yeah, but to maybe increase it or
Maybe
enhance it.
consolidate it or something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Anybody have objections to that?
make it a priority. How's that?
Oh, right.
I like
make it
that.
priority. What do they say that
You
there
could
was the
make it a-
discipline squad or something like that, right?
The what squad? The goon squad?
They
What'd you
call
say?
themselves the
integrity control.
discipline
Oh.
control. Is that it? So
Mhm.
make the discipline.
Could we,
I
although
did-
we could we in the, back to Adam's point, could we make a mention in the resolution that, something to the effect, whereas in the long term, we feel traffic enforcement should be, this is not the time, whereas, I don't know, something about whereas in the long term, we really do think that DOT should take traffic enforcement. We realize that this is not the time. Can we say it somewhere?
I will tell you that I disagree completely. When the time comes is the time when we should ask. Right now, we want to address this situation and talk about what we can do right now to start, well,
I
using
do
it
think
out,
that
get rid of it.
I do think to maybe help Adam and Janet is that just, slapping somebody on the wrist in the police department who is a repeat violator and losing a vacation day is not enough. It's not enough. And I think that the punishment needs to be stronger and it needs to be given to a different agency because they're not policing their own. And, to your point, Adam, here's a car. We'll see what that was parked next to the police officer, obviously belonged to an officer. We'll see if he actually gets back to us. You remember you mentioned the license plate during the meeting. I think that what I would be willing to write is that when it comes to a member in the police department, that it actually gets handed over to another agency and the police shouldn't enforce its own members, and subtracting vacation days is minimal. It's too minimal.
What agency would you suggest, Stan?
Well, maybe what's their internal affairs unit? Or if not in police internal affairs, then it shouldn't be vacation days. It should be that the vehicle should be impounded because they're not above the law and that it's not working.
A more strict.
Yeah, that doesn't work for us. Oh, maybe he lost a vacation day or not. We don't know.
Yeah, so, but a more strict, you hate to say punishment, what's a better word? But that's what we mean.
Discipline.
Not more strict, disciplinary measure.
Yes.
Something like that.
I'd say they're not losing vacation days because if they were, it wouldn't be so flagrant. We see too much of it.
I imagine the union would not have approved that either.
Oh, union.
That's a great point, Natasha.
Just to be clear, the union wouldn't have approved losing vacation days over a.
I mean, maybe they did give it away. I just, having seen some of the union leaders, speak out for their folks, I don't see that as something that happened, but maybe that is something that was negotiated. But I would be a little cautious about putting language in about like discipline, just because that can get a little fraught.
About Jeffrey Rowland's
How
point,
about more severe consequences? Jeffrey Rowland just suggests that.
Severe consequence, yes.
Does that sound right, Natasha? In terms
Sure.
of union lingo? Okay.
Good.
Now, Janet again.
Sorry, we chose not to say anything in the meeting, but Natasha, that would have been a good question. How does the union feel about losing that your policeman losing vacation day?
Yes. We'll hold another forum on that one, specifically for the union. So Adam, are you still there? Or you're not, you don't have your hand raised?
I am.
Yeah,
No, I just
okay.
have one last point. I think my concerns are about enforcement in general, not just the self-enforcement, of NYPD amongst their own, but really for the whole city. And it seems to me like there should be some type of economic incentive for whatever group is charged with enforcement. So, whether that's revenue sharing or even a cost dependency, I think that could kind of determine
economic
the level of
incentives for
staffing
the people who rat on them, or economic incentives?
No. For the agencies themselves, I think the agencies should just self-fund their enforcement units, and then that creates an incentive to actually perform enforcement at a high level. And then the following piece from that would be that bad behavior would go down, and then revenue would go down, and then that would cause that unit to kind of shrink in size in the long run, and it would sort of level out at a homeostasis point where we have the right level of enforcement. I think, I think if we just have this as another one of their duties, it's not going to be enough to incentivize them to actually do the enforcement.
So how does everybody feel about that?
I think that gets tricky because, quotas are really dangerous. If you say you have to, that it could encourage them. I mean, not on obscuring license plates, because that's a sort of a cut and dry issue, but just on ticketing in general, it could induce, there's like a self-interest. I mean, I don't know. I think
I think it's the wrong form for this too. And I don't think it's a good idea because it's proven even in Memphis, there was a little bit of quotas to be served. And I just don't think it's a very wise thing to equate with money. It's a very poor, I wouldn't write it. And I wouldn't suggest it, certainly not for this meeting.
Okay. Natasha, you wanted to say something else?
I guess also just, or more so a question, I think Zach Whitehouse, if I have one of the guests that attended, he mentioned that there's some oh, sorry. You mentioned some confusion over motorcycle licenses and that there needed to be clarification. Is that, I didn't fully follow the, okay.
I can explain it. So there's a different issue that we talk about, which is electric bikes riding on sidewalks. And this is Darlene also mentioned it, and she's right, but it's a different issue and we shouldn't confuse.
Oh, it is a different issue. Yeah.
Got it.
That
And
one's
Jeffrey
even
mentioned
more
it too.
difficult
He's
to answer.
absolutely right, but it's not what we're talking about here. We got to stay
Right.
streamlined with skirt
Stay
licenses.
focused.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Janice, did you want to say something else? I see your hands. still
Oh,
up.
no, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. So anybody else? Well, no, no more comments. So anyhow,
Oh, you got George's hand is up. You got George. George, is your hand up? You got to unmute if you don't
I
mind.
don't see George. Oh, yeah, there you are. George, do you want to speak?
I just wanted to, recall that at the very beginning of this conversation, there was a mention that congestion pricing, which is not yet specifically described as to how it's to happen and so forth, and that the price of congestion has to be high enough to discourage traffic so it actually produces a smoother flow. That means we're talking about some substantial increases in toll rates. And that also has an enforcement part of it, but it would be certainly desirable to have it done automatically so that the price can be extracted from motorists as they register or whatever else. I think that in anything that we do on this issue, we ought to at least say that the congestion pricing element of it needs to be fully aired and discussed as part of reducing car use in our community.
Yeah. So Dan, you want to say something?
Yeah,
right?
actually, that's a really interesting idea, and Adam might even have some ideas on this. How can we maybe replace license plates to put, every car has how we have easy passes. Maybe that goes into the registration. I mean, there's ways. I mean, the license plate is such an old technology. Maybe there's a new technology, not something that we can come up with now, but where every car is registered and you can't really drive one without it. I don't know. It's just the license plates, like what it's just an old technology. It might be a newer technology. You rent a car, they track you everywhere. It doesn't.
But whatever the case, certainly congestion pricing is another area which can be taken so much advantage of with this kind of
Right. With congestion
crime.
pricing coming down the pike, it's sort of more critical than ever to attack this issue because it will totally screw up our congestion pricing if in this current scenario.
Right.
Definitely a whereas that will be dedicated to. We will definitely take care. We'll definitely include that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that
But
up.
the other, there was another mention. I think Adam, you came up with this in earlier. Is maybe there is incentive for our public employees like NYPD and fire department to actually get transportation into the city so they don't have to drive, and whereby there's actually benefit and a bonus to them, a financial incentive to take public transportation. Because right now, there's no incentive. You drive in, you obscure your license plate, you park right by the precinct.
That's true.
It is
Give
my
everybody a
understanding,
free
however,
Metro
that
pass and LIRR pass and whatever public transportation to get into the city.
apparently they get that already today. NYPD get free Metro Pass and free
No kidding.
commuter rail pass. So there is an incentive. I think I would actually support giving them a stipend to use it, to come in via transit. I think there's a lot of concerns about public safety and perception of public safety, both valid concerns. And I think, having more police commuting in uniform, on Long Island Railroad, on Metro North, on the subway, on the bus, I think would actually be a good thing. Maybe some would disagree with me about that, but I would support giving them a stipend to come in via transit.
And what about teachers?
Yeah, what about every other public? I mean, it's a good
Yeah.
idea, Adam. I'm glad you
It's
brought it
pretty
up,
good
but
stuff.
is every government employee
They don't
gets
abuse.
a stipend?
Yeah,
Sure.
there's less abuse.
Teachers.
I would say no. Teachers aren't abusing placards as much as NYPD are.
So then
And teachers
abuse is
aren't
I
being,
don't really
abuse
know
is,
that.
adding a benefit for safety.
yeah, but abuse, but then you're rewarding abuse.
Okay, so
Well, but there's also a public safety upside.
we're not gonna bring up placards
This
though.
is not, no, right.
No,
Yes.
no, that's another topic to discuss.
But maybe what we
Uh,
can hint at is, since there does seem to be a connection to obscured plates and municipal workers and officers, perhaps the city should consider a stipend or a benefit to take public transportation. And even in uniform will make the public even safer, and they should get paid for wearing the uniform on public transportation. I would support that measure
In this resolution?
in this
Or maybe-
resolution
or
because
maybe you want to
it's
put it
connected.
in, and then we can always look, and we can always, do.
it has to be
do a
worded
little
carefully.
Maneuvering or something if we think we
Are
should.
you saying that a police officer going from home of maybe Hempstead, Long Island, to wear a uniform and go on the Long Island Railroad or public transportation and wear his uniform to his precinct? Is that what you're inferring?
I think Adam, that's
Yes.
what I interpreted it, Adam was saying.
Yes, precisely. I think that would add, a perception of safety and a, real
I
realization
won't
of
go
safety
along
and-
with that. I will not go along with that. No,
Out of interest, Lois, what's your
Well, I
reservation?
agree
why
with
not?
you, Lois.
because a person who is going to work is not
Required
working.
a uniform.
Well, no, we're talking about paying them if they decide to wear the uniform.
I'd have to think about that. That's something very interesting. That would be also a union issue.
Probably.
Yeah,
Maybe we
think
should
about
avoid
that
that.
too.
and-
We're going
and-
off the topic. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is going off the topic. Now that I think about it, it
It's
just might
kind
get
of
too
a
complicated.
revolutionary idea, but maybe it isn't for this
Not for
resolution.
this.
Right,
Maybe we-
right,
Let's stick to
right.
the enforcement and maybe mention a sentence about figuring out a way so that we can reward our officers such as but we're not punishing. But I don't think we should go too far into that. I think the police should not be enforcing their own when it comes to when they find an unobscured license plate and then taking away vacation days. I think we all agree that doesn't make sense. Mistake.
I don't know, it might make sense if it was done. I mean, I think it would deter them. We just don't believe that it's happening.
But if we can't push it off to DOT, who else would do it then? I mean, I hear what you're saying, Dan.
I would
mean,
say it should be handed over outside the precinct to internal affairs. If it's, if it's a repeat. They can still police their own, but
You know what? I have a question because I really don't know. I guess it's the state though that regulates license plates. If there is any sort of technology around that would, within itself, the way we do traffic calming to narrow a street so we slow traffic down, it's built in. Is there some kind of technology that could be built in to the way a license plate is made that would work against this.
That was my
kind of
point,
thing.
Shirley. I was saying the same exact thing. So you're not looking at a number, the plate actually has, but you probably could still obscure it, or maybe it's a digital chip, but it's really kind of the same concept. We should research technology that replaces the old school, 1920s idea of a license plate to come up with a
Right.
new technology in which to replace it so that you can't obscure it.
Yeah,
Like if you,
but who would we recommend that to? Would that be New York
that's state,
State?
that's
That is
state,
state.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we could certainly express our sentiments for something like that. How quickly they would do it is another story. I mean, what do you
Something
think?
to consider, yeah. So an alarm goes off if you go across the bridge and you don't have a sensor, it's an illegal car. Right now, you can drive right through, it's just an obscure license plate. But if you don't have the chip, you're immediately tagged. And there's an alert, but that's 10 years from now. And there's, like I said, there's so many other issues, but I would imagine technology is going to go through the roof. There's going to be a lot of advances with the congestion pricing. They're going to have to track cars because we living downtown are not going to be subject to the congestion tax. But if you go on, in other words, if you go on West Street from Morton Street or from Barrow Street and you go up and you cross on Christopher, you will not get charged the congestion tax. So they has to be tracking. You can't be anybody that's entering. It has to be within a certain zone. So they're going to have to, and I'm sure that's part of the delay, is like, how do you make sure that folks aren't getting double charged? But that's, once again, they're going to have to come up with something with cars to better, not regulate them, but to make sure they're being fined when they need to be fined or assessment when it comes down to assessment.
Oh, and Amy, you have something to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think this is a really good conversation. Maybe what we simply say is that we would like this issue to be taken into account as they're designing, enforcement of congestion pricing. We could just say that. And then, because we don't have the information to recommend something at this point, right? That wasn't covered tonight, but that could be its own part of the resolution, its own paragraph. So it's bold, it stands out. I don't know how other people think about that.
Well, I think we all agree that we should be talking about how this is certainly would hinder congestion pricing, this kind
I
of.
would just simplify it and say, this should be an important consideration as they're designing.
Yeah.
The structure and enforcement of congestion pricing. That could be just that simple.
Yeah. And so how about anybody else?
That's fine with me.
I think we got an awful lot of places. Okay, so Janet, you and I have to confer about our report. Dan, once you get a draft, just pass it around with all of us. And
When, let's see,
but
what's the date today?
We have the whole month.
Whole month. I'm away most of the month. So I have Sundays only free. I'm working all Saturdays, and then Sunday I have 2 birthdays, mine and my mother's. So I'll try to do it in between. So the sooner you can get me that report, the better for me.
okay.
Earlier in the month is better, and then I'm like, and it's a short month, so.
Yeah, I just want to tell you that, there is a transcript. Do you want me to make sure you get the transcript too?
I don't think I need the transcript, but yes, get it to me. I think your notes are going to be terrifically important. I was taking some notes too. I don't want to be too one-sided, but I think the right idea is I have my notes, you have your notes, you send me a report, and I'll do the best I can to draft it. And we'll send it around as soon as possible. But I might ask you, Shirley, once the draft is written, to just take it over from there.
Okay.
All right.
Dan, if you would like a second pair of eyes while you're writing it, just to look at it for.
You're amazing. Thank you, Amy.
Oh, I'm happy to do it.
So we've got.
I'm semi-retired,
people
so I can help you.
I
I'm
wanna
doing
I
that.
said something about
semi-retired.
enforcement, but I think we are. Carter, do you want to say something? I see in the chat you would put in something about enforcement. Are you there, Carter? But I think we are talking about enforcement, aren't we? Carter, there you are. What did you have to say about it? Can't hear you. It's weird. You're unmuted. Very strange.
I mean, I think if I could just respond to Carter's chat question, I think even supporting the 2 or 3 bills or proposed bills that were mentioned, I think does that. Because we're giving extra tools to law enforcement to increase penalties, the citizens reporting, et cetera, to bolster up enforcement. That's at least my response to Carter. But maybe he's trying to touch on something else.
I interpret it as there's a disconnect between what the NYPD is saying that they're enforcing and the reality of the enforcement. We heard statistics from the 5th. Oh, there were 60 tickets that went out, but then we're hearing from other folks that this is a rampant problem. So there's a disconnect between the NYPD and what actually is happening, but maybe it's just as simple as calling out the disconnect.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we
Sorry,
can.
I'm in a low connectivity area and there was a lot of noise also. Yeah, my point is that they're just not doing anything about it. It's just like Adam said, you walk by, you see it, boom, it's right there. And the issue is just nobody's enforcing the existing rules. And we keep talking around that over and over again, but at the end of the day, I mean, the laws are there. It's great to have better, more specific pinpointed laws. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't drift away from pointing out that it's the enforcement, because the second you drift into other things, it allows them not to do enforcement. And that's why it's so important to keep on that point, because what we want to see is a ramp up to match the percentage of the vehicles you see, to have that ramp up in the enforcement activities through violations. And when we go away from that, we actually are taking away from that very issue. As any of us who, you walk around the community, you ride your bike, you see this, it's everywhere. So I guess that's frustrating to me, is when we drift off, because it's right there and it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an excuse for them. Once you send them off on another discussion point, they don't answer the underlying question: is why is the enforcement not done?
Well, just if I can answer Carter, I think that's the whole purpose of this meeting, is to ramp up the awareness, get more articles and press on it, make it a priority for the NYPD, letting them know there's a watchdog. You have the governor on the case. You have Brad Hoylman on this. You have Brad Lander. You have a guy that was arrested in Brooklyn for actually calling 311. So obviously there's it's not their precincts, but yes, we have to raise issues with it so that people are punished. And the NYPD is punished for not enforcing, rather than turning a blind eye or making it a priority. We even heard from the policemen today that oftentimes these scofflaws are very much connected to other crimes that are happening in the neighborhood, that they're often finding other issues, whether it's dealing with drugs or anything else. There's a reason why they're obscuring their license plates. We should make it a priority. It shouldn't be something that you turn around and say, I don't have the time to deal with this. It should be a priority.
Yeah, I don't mean to go back and forth, but you're right. But there are also a couple of levels of things. There are people who are hiding other illegal activities. There are people who are avoiding tolls. There are people who are avoiding red light cameras. There are people who are avoiding speeding. These are all different things. And to lump them all together to the bigger issues, just the point is that you shouldn't have plates that are covered, right? And I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying underneath that, that's the issue. And maybe another question that could have been asked is, are these dangerous traffic stops to stop a vehicle that has a covered plate because of those other activities? And is that an issue? And I raise it because it's the parked cars part. It's obvious, right? Why aren't those just getting tickets? And that begins a pattern, right? As those ramp up and the car gets towed, that's small potatoes, but it gets the point, right?
I have a homework assignment that I think Carter just brought up. It's like, when you're walking around every time, and right around my neighborhood here, I feel like probably 2 cars parked a block away. Take a picture. Send us the pictures of all the obscured license plates that are parked. If you can remember to do it with your phone, and then, low resolution, and send it to me, email it to me. And it'd be awesome if in the next couple of weeks, we have 100 different cars we've identified, and here you go, here's the issue, because it's going to be visual evidence. So if you're walking down the street and you see a car parked and has obscured license plate, take a picture of it.
And can you just mention where, like the intersection or something?
Doesn't matter. It's like we just show plate after plate obscured. If all of us participate and do that, it could be a pretty powerful statement.
It does matter because if you take the photograph and it's in front of a police precinct and it has a placard on it. That's
You guys decide. It's going to be a little bit more work for me to put it together. If I'm going to be putting the two pictures together, it'd be a lot less work if we just show different license plates, all obscured in our neighborhood in CB2.
I'll help you, Dan.
Well, I think if everybody does it or remembers it, if you see it, take a picture of it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, then somebody just asked if we want the whole public to do it.
Yes, everybody, send it. I don't want to send it to Mark Diller, but he could send it to me then, and I'll put it together, but maybe that's the best place to go. But yes, by all means, the more pictures we have of different license plates, I think the more powerful our argument is.
Oh, you could send it to, you want them to send it to you, Dan?
Not really. I don't think my
To the
private
board
email
office,
address is the
I
right
think.
place, but maybe to the CB2 office, and then they pass it on. How do you feel about that, Mark?
Yeah, Mark just put his community board address in the district
Glad to do
manager.
it.
Just send it to the district manager for community board too. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, well, I think that we pretty well have an agenda that we can put forth. And Janet, I'll get you write up yours, I'll write up whatever I have, and we can sort of combine. And Janet, would you want to see the transcript too? I mean, I think that probably if we're going to be working on these things, we should be.
I'm happy to look at the transcript. I mean, I figure we were both taking notes, so between what I missed, you got, what you missed, I got, hopefully.
Yeah, okay. I think we have plenty in our notes. But the
Yeah,
transcript
then we can
sometimes
listen
catches things.
to fill
Then
the
again, the
blank.
transcript sometimes catches things in very odd ways because it doesn't always hear, what people are really saying. So I think we're pretty well agreeing on the track to take, right? So I think that Dan and Janet and I have our work cut out for us. Amy, maybe you.
Yeah, and if
They have
today, Wednesday,
something.
can you
But
get
know
me
what?
something?
This is going to be distributed to everybody anyhow, the resolution. So
Janet, Shirley, can you get it to me by Saturday? Because that would be the day that I work on it. If you can get it to me. by
yes,
Saturday.
I
All right.
can. Janet, how about you?
Yeah, Saturday.
we'll
yeah,
do
I
it.
can- by
Do it.
Saturday.
And I'm going to work on it this weekend early, and then we'll make sure it's an important resolution. But we won't actually submit it until right before, where we have all the pictures, and we'll add that as an addendum, just if it's impressive enough. All right, terrific.
Oh,
Thank you,
that sounds like
everybody.
it might
Thank
even
you.
be effective. Take care, everybody, and thank you very much. And thanks for
Bye,
sitting,
everybody.
Stella Fitzgerald. And is it your birthday, Dan? Happy birthday.
Oh, will be, yes, the 19th, but that's not for another couple weekends. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. See you soon,
Bye.
everybody. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Take care,
My
everybody.
mom's birthday on Sunday. So there you go.